All right, welcome everybody to Unraveling the Unexplained. My name is Kat, and I am a longtime astral traveler and spirit consultant. This is my brother John, longtime
Hello.
fan of the paranormal and the unusual, and he has picked a video for me to react to. I have no idea what it is, so let's find out and jump into it. What do we got here?
It is a haunted castle.
Noise.
The chains clanked together as the prisoners were marched through the field. They had walked for miles at this point, chained together at the wrists and ankles, somewhere deep in the Czech Republic, the guards flanking them on all sides on their horses. They were marching forward on a promise. The Duke himself had come to the prison just a few days earlier and presented an offer to several of the men. If they would come with him and his men and help discover what was inside a hole at the site of a former fort, they would be pardoned and released. A motley crew of rapists and murderers all jumped at the chance. Yet as the large limestone cliff came into view, with the long decayed remains of a wooden fort on top of it, a sense of fear washed over them. Why exactly would the Duke present what appeared on paper to be such a simple task to a group of men who had nothing to lose? As they reached the top of the path, they finally got a good look at the hole. The remaining men who weren't already suspicious and fearful certainly were now. One of the guards who had accompanied them there laid out how this was going to work. One by one, the men would be slow.
Can you imagine?
Yeah.
How about you go down this hole?
It's not suspicious.
That's not suspicious. Like,
I'm sure it's going to be perfectly fine. It's not weird at all that they've taken a bunch of condemned prisoners out into the middle of nowhere to this hole in this fort and asked you to take a look down. You know, all you got to do is go down there and you come out, you're a free man.
something tells me you ain't coming out of that hole.
You got to start asking yourself, how many other men have already been
Down
down
the
this
hole.
hole?
Exactly. You better stab me now.
Slowly lowered down into the hole by a rope. Their task was simple: to reach the bottom of the pit and then come back up and report what they had seen.
Hell no.
They would start at the first man in the
Take me
line
back to
and
the
continue
cell.
on
Hell no.
until someone was able to successfully reach the bottom and tell the guards what it was they wanted to know. The first prisoner approached, and he now found himself glancing down into what looked like a bottomless pit. As the guards began to fasten the rope around his waist, there was no hope of seeing the bottom. All that lay there before him was darkness. The guards began to lower the prisoner down. Very quickly, the world became a very dark place for the prisoner. The guards and prisoners alike crowded around the edge of the hole, trying to see or hear anything from the man who had just been lowered in. There was nothing, just a rope descending into darkness and an uncomfortable silence. That was until the screaming started. The prisoner's screams echoed around the walls of the pit. The guards quickly grabbed the rope and began hoisting it back up.
How would you like to be the rest of the people in line at this point?
Every surge of effort the men put into pulling him back into our world. After a short while, they saw the man still screaming as he was being pulled out of the darkness, but something was different. It was difficult to tell as he was still being pulled up, but once the guards hoisted him back over the edge and onto the ground, they all froze in a stunned silence. The young, dirty-faced man that they had lowered into the hole just a few minutes before was covered in deep wrinkles. His hair was grey, and his eyes as wide as saucers with fear. The man had somehow aged decades. They couldn't get much out of him, but he made reference to an impenetrable blackness, horrible smells, and most concerning, the sound of distant screaming that was not his own. That was all the guards could get out of him before his rambles descended into indecipherable gibberish. The prisoner was taken back by a single guard as the rest got the next prisoner ready to head into the hole. The first prisoner was taken back in a hope that after some rest he would be able to reveal more. Within 48 hours he was dead. Whatever had happened to him in that hole, his heart couldn't take it. Welcome to the tape library. Tonight we're heading to Europe to explore a location that has an unbelievably rich history of folklore and apparent paranormal goings-on. We've got stories of demons, pagan rituals, time travel, occultism, ghosts,
Okay, this castle
and
has it
even
all.
Nazis, all centered around one castle in a remote area of
The only
the
thing
Czech
not
Republic.
going on here is freaking aliens.
We're going to be covering events that take us from 800 AD all the way up to the present day. It's time to delve into the horrifying legends of Hoska Castle and the gate to hell it apparently protects. Hoska sits in a strange location, north of Prague, in a remote, swampy region of the Czech Republic. What now stands on the grounds of Hoska Castle isn't the original structure.
It's a weird-looking
Sometime in
building.
the late 800s, Prince Slavibor came across the location that would become Hoska. He seemingly decided to build a wooden castle, something that wouldn't have been unusual at the time. Construction on the fort quickly began, but something happened that caused a few issues. Much of the surrounding area is made up of limestone cliffs. While building continued, the limestone split. Not a particularly uncommon occurrence, but this split in the cliff left a particularly large hole, one that the workers couldn't seem to find the bottom of. They began to fill it with stone, but no matter how much they poured into the crevice, it never seemed to even begin to fill. The stone never even made a sound as they poured it in. The locals began referring to this hole as a gateway to hell. Most would never venture near the hole, especially late at night, but those who did claimed that soon after it had opened up, creatures had started to crawl out of it, the most common of which were described as dark, shadowy figures with large, leathery, bat-like wings. They would be seen crawling out of the hole by those who dared to venture near it, but were also apparently spotted, flying overhead the location of the fort, from those in the closest settlements. Others made references to a whole host of other creatures that appeared to be part human and part animal. One of the more notable of these creatures is described as being a strange mix between a frog, a dog, and a person. This hole to hell and the subsequent beasts that appear to be escaping from it was very quickly blamed for the issues that the locals were having. Men were apparently being struck down with strange illnesses. Livestock were found dead, or in some cases were being carried off into the night. Prince Slavibor's family would never move into the wooden fortress. Those who were staying there during the construction quickly fled before it could be completed, and the prince's men left the fortress abandoned, never to return. It would be around 400 years later before anyone attempted to build on the location again. Sometime in the late 1200s, seemingly under the orders of Ottokar II of Bohemia, a castle would be built on the location of the now ruined wooden fort. Certainly, when Ottokar's men arrived at the location, they would have known about the legend of the gate to hell. The stories had not gone away over the last few hundred years. This is when the plan was put together to send prisoners into the hole, to see if there was any truth to this gate to hell story. Of course, we already know what happened to the first prisoner, but it is said that much the same happened to all the subsequent men who were lowered into the hole. Despite not being able to solve the mystery of what was inside that hole, construction of the castle continued. Stone slabs were laid over the top of the hole, and atop these slabs,
I've been thinking that for like the last 5
Why
minutes.
not just cover the damn thing?
Like, I know you all knew how to move stone, like just put a stone slab over it and call it good. Like,
Just build a nice thick floor over that, forget it's there, call it a day.
yeah, exactly. Covered in dirt, plant some grass. It was never there. I was wondering. Thank you, people of the ancient times, for restoring some of my faith.
Eventually getting your acts together.
Yeah, let's lower people into the hole. Like fishing for demons?
Like what were you hoping to accomplish?
I don't know.
Did you think there was gold in there?
I don't know what they thought. After the first guy, they should have just stopped, but no, they kept lowering people into the hole.
Well, it's like, you know, when your duke gives you orders, I guess you just, like he said, put all the prisoners in the hole. What are we going to tell them? That
Russell's
do
Chapel, seemingly in a vain hope of keeping whatever evil they believed existed there at bay. The castle has been renovated many times over the years as it's passed around in ownership, which leads to some confusion over what elements actually represented what the original castle looked like. But the common claim is that this castle appears to have effectively been built inside out. This is often described as a cube within a cube within a cube. There are few windows and no battlements that would have allowed archers to point their bows outside the castle to defend it. Instead, all of the castle's defences appear to be facing inwards, as though the building were designed to stop something from getting out. What's more, the very location appears to be a strange choice. No running water seemed to be close to the castle. No kitchen was seemingly built in its original construction. It was not along any trade routes and was some distance from any settlements. It doesn't feel like Castle Hoska was ever intended to function as a castle at all. The building of the chapel and the covering of the whole didn't really seem to achieve anything. Stories of winged beasts being spotted over the courtyard of the now completed Castle Hoska were commonplace, as well as a number of strange apparitions that have been regularly reported. Some claim to see a horse running through the forests that surround the castle late at night. Where its head should be was an open wound, gushing out blood from the neck as it ran past witnesses. This isn't the only headless apparition that has been reported, with many also claiming to see a man staggering about, no head, leaving a trail of blood in his wake. Elsewhere on the ground surrounding the castle, there are stories of people seeing a row of prisoners, all dressed in black robes. These prisoners are chained together. A pack of dogs is regularly said to be chasing the prisoners, gnawing at them as they walk, ripping limbs from them. A more traditional ghost that is regularly spotted is that of a beautiful woman with long dark hair and dressed all in white, who is often spotted walking alone through the upper halls of the castle. As I mentioned, over the years, Hoska has been taken over by various groups. In the year 1630, the castle was said to have been taken over by a gang of mercenaries, led by a man named Oranto. He and his men are taken to raping and pillaging the surrounding settlements, and bringing back not just goods but also people. The locals believed that Oranto and his men were bringing the kidnapped villagers back to the castle to use them in rituals. 2 hunters were hired to attempt to kill the man. The 2 hunters approached the castle. From the outside they could see the window of the room Oranto was staying in, lit up by candlelight. The hunters gently called out Oranto's name, who approached his window to see who dared to call on him. With just a single shot, the hunters apparently hit Oranto between the eyes. Oranto didn't die immediately, and Oranto lay on the floor of his bedchamber, calling for his men to bring him his black hen that he seemingly believed would somehow save his life. But before the men could fetch the bird, he would bleed to death. News quickly spread of Oranto's passing, and while many of his men fled, the local law enforcement arrived soon after to take the remaining men to prison.
Bring me my chicken.
Fetch my black hen. This is why it's very hard to take ancient legends seriously. You know, they believe that there's some evil in the whole, but they also said they believe that being left-handed is evil. You know, like it's...
And apparently...
They believed in the occult up there, but yeah, the man also wanted a black chicken to save his life. Like, it's hard to...
Discerning fact from fiction when it comes to old tales can definitely be a little difficult.
These people believed a lot of things, so...
Who knows, maybe the hen could do something.
I don't, yeah.
I really want to know
Leaving
the story
Castle
of the black
Hoska
chicken
empty,
is.
once again. Early in the 19th century, the castle was undergoing yet another change in ownership. One maintenance worker, who found himself alone late one afternoon, working close to the chapel. He was busy repairing a wall when he heard something. A voice. The man called out, but the voice didn't seem to react. It didn't stop speaking, but it didn't respond to his calls. The man downed his tools and headed into the chapel. It was empty. Chattering started up again. It began to sound like it was more than one voice. The man looked around the chapel, baffled at what was going on. The voices got louder. He could tell they were speaking another language, one he did not recognize. And even more concerning was the fact that the source of the voices seemed to be coming from inside the walls of the chapel. The man was immediately terrified and turned and ran. He refused to ever return to Castle Hoska again. One of the other frequently reported phenomena at Castle Hoska is that of apparent time slips. The most famous of these accounts comes from the writer and poet Karel Hynek Matcha. It is said that Matcha was taking a walking tour of the area in 1836 when he decided to take lodging for the night at Castle Hoska. That night, as he lay in bed, Matcha claimed to have had a dream that had such a profound effect on him. He recounted it to a friend when he returned home. He said that in his dream he felt like he was falling through a dark tunnel, deep into a pit. He claimed he came out into a world that he described as horribly mechanized. He wandered the streets of what he soon realized was Prague, but everything seemed different. He spoke to a little girl who told him the year was 2006. He stated that this little girl showed him moving pictures in a small casket that she held in her hands. He also stated that as darkness fell on this hellish, as he described it, version of Prague, that he walked among sandstone cliffs, riddled with holes that projected eerie yellow lights. Many have suggested that this description chillingly matches up to the huge tower block homes on the outskirts of Prague in the modern day. 100 years later, Europe would be undergoing yet another massive change. The world was at war, and in 1938 the Munich Pact was signed, effectively handing over huge portions of the Czech Republic to Nazi Germany. The Nazis commandeered 4 castles, one of which was Hoska. Much has been written about the Nazis' interest in the occult, while it's debatable if Hitler himself actually put much weight into it. Himmler was seemingly fascinated by the subject, apparently taking something of a scientific approach to the study. The majority of what the Nazis were up to at Hoska Castle during the war is simply rumour and speculation. Some have said that Hoska was used as a place for the Nazis to bring captured Polish and Russian women to begin the process of breeding the future of the Aryan race. There are also claims that Himmler was a regular at Hoska, that he was using the castle for experiments and rituals, that often the German High Command were summoned to the castle to partake in rituals that he believed would turn the war in the Germans' favour. The dark shadow of their brief reign of terror over Hoska did emerge several years after the war. The castle was being used for convalescent stay for a group of unwell children, but at some point during their stay, they discovered that 3 of the Nazis were still there. They were long dead, seemingly executed by their own men, as no reports of any battles had taken place in the area. Even more strangely, though, is that the bodies of the 3 Nazis were discovered, just placed, underneath the floorboards. Throughout the 20th century and into modern times, the tales of demonic entities seem to have died down. But that's not to say it hasn't had its fair share of recent phenomena. One of the previous owners of the castle spoke about how one evening he was in a room drinking wine with friends. He placed his glass down on the table. The entire group quickly stopped laughing and joking when they witnessed the man's glass lift off the table and hover in the air before them all. The castle has become very popular with ghost hunters, with a number of teams visiting the castle. In 2014, one such team visited. They claimed that much of their electronic equipment's batteries were drained, despite being fully charged. Heard a number of odd sounds throughout the chapel, and one member even claimed to have felt a burning sensation on his chest. When he pulled up his t-shirt, he revealed a blistering burn underneath. The castle has actually been open to the public since 1999. However, in one documentary, the castle's wardens claimed that they were forced to limit overnight stays after one night a person who wanted to stay in the castle threw themselves from their bedroom window in the middle of the night. Another common occurrence is that of seeing shadow figures walking through the castle, often up on the walkway above the courtyard. One couple who were dining at the castle one evening claimed to have had a darker experience. They saw 2 semi-transparent figures dressed in black robes that had no faces. The figures quickly moved towards the couple, whispering to one another. The couple were convinced that they heard them talking about the killing of young girls. An Irishman who visited the castle in recent years, who claimed that there was a specific room in the castle that could be used to transport oneself through time. A clinical hypnotherapist called Alexandra Mackenzie had become fascinated with the story of Hoska Castle. One day she made the trip to the castle and instantly headed down toward the infamous chapel. But she said when she approached the doorway, she felt something telling her not to go in. Instead, she found herself drawn to heading outside, exploring the grounds. As she walked up a nearby hill, she claimed she felt a strong gust of wind blow through her hair, and then she was hit with the sudden realization that something had changed. She glanced down to see that she was now dressed all in white, with a belt wrapped around her waist. She followed the path back down the hill towards the castle, being joined by other young women as she did. They were all moving in what felt like some sort of procession. She then glanced down again. This time, though, she was completely naked. That is when she claimed that she was hit with the overwhelming realization that they were marching towards their deaths, that she was heading into Hoska Castle to be sacrificed. So what's really happening at Hoska Castle? As I mentioned at the start of the episode, this is a location so steeped in very real dark history as well as folklore, so it becomes almost impossible to gauge how much weight to give any individual story. There have been some suggestions that maybe people really do see things at this castle, but that there is a very natural reason for this. Could the split in the limestone have sent up some sort of gas that caused the residents to hallucinate, and that these reported hallucinations then created a terrifying legacy around the castle? And then, over the years, people began to expect to see the fantastical, even if it wasn't really there. The claims about the castle having no outside defences at all seem a little suspicious as well. Seemingly there was at least a moat surrounding the castle, as well as other possible defences, but that these were taken away during one of the many remodelings of the location. Regardless, the design of the castle is unusual. Is Hoska Castle simply a hole in the ground that started as local superstition before merging with a more modern interest in the paranormal? Or is there something more to it than that? Maybe there is a reason why so many people over the centuries have seen it as a location of high importance to the spiritual realm. That's all for this entry into the tape library.
Alright. Cool.
All right.
And we will link this video and this channel in the description. Please go check out the original channel and the original creators. Support the original creators. It really does matter so much.
So, what are your thoughts?
I feel like this is a very old story. Why do I feel like, didn't we watch like a nun movie that sounds just like this?
It does sound like we've heard this kind of plot before in certain movies, and I would not be shocked at all if certain horror stories have taken inspiration from stuff like this.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that we watched a movie that sounded almost exactly like this story, and it's probably based on it. Like I was saying before, it's kind of hard to know how much of it
should be taken seriously.
Well, no, it's hard to know what begets what, right? So all of the phenomena that they're describing is all phenomena that's possible.
Yeah,
right?
it's the kind of stuff, it's like I've heard about these kind of things individually all over the place. You know, I've heard of holes or strange caves that lead to nowhere. I've heard of time travel slips, you know, sightings of weird creatures, cryptids, ghosts. It just feels like all of those things kind of convalesced at one spot with this castle.
Well, yeah, and honestly, I'm not surprised. The whole area has a really long history of people thinking something evil or spooky or whatever is happening there, and so when you walk into a situation contributing that kind of energy to it already,
they're already feeding into it.
Right, which, and again, like, to my way of thinking, if you're manifesting your reality, you manifest what you believe is going to happen, and you're actually... This is what I mean, is it's hard to know what begets what, right? Because...
Clearly, I would almost say, like, there was something there. I mean, there is the story that as they were building the initial fort, the ground split, the limestone split, and it created this hole. Now, that it was around that point they were starting to see weird things, like the winged creatures or whatever. Now... Could there have already been something there that still sparked kind of the initial thing, and then over time the locals' fears and superstitions of the place started to feed into what was already there and make it manifest more?
I don't necessarily believe in the portals to hell. Like, I don't believe in hell. Like, I don't believe
But it could be a
portal
portal to somewhere, or something that already existed. Like some sort of destabilization.
It could be that, like they said, the big fissure in the ground released gases that came out and caused people to hallucinate, and things took off from there. There is such a thing as places that have energy convergences, ley lines, certain kinds of things where it could be more than likely you're dealing with a time period in history where people just saw everything as being evil, bad omens, you know. And so when something like that happened, again, it's possible it released something, people were seeing stuff, but over time contributing that much energy and belief and practice to it actually began to manifest symptoms because of the dark legends surrounding the place. People were sacrificing people there, you know, or because of it started to actually accumulate the negative energy from that, and so things begin to actually manifest in the area. Does it make sense what I'm saying? Like, I don't think that there are places in the world that can crack open and open a portal to hell or anything like that. I do think it's possible for humans to contribute enough of their own belief structure and energy and psychic construction to an area, to a situation, to have real things begin to manifest that look along those lines.
All right, so like there wouldn't have been something there initially. It was just somehow created, or
What do you mean?
what I'm trying to figure out here is the human factor you're talking about, the contribution of whatever energy people's beliefs were adding into it. Is that what created it in the first place, or was there something there for those beliefs to latch onto?
That's what I mean, is it's hard to tell in this case what begets what. Do you know what I mean? Because it's such an old story. So is it possible that this energetic happening in the earth that opened up a big fissure and had enough energy in it to start something?
Collecting, yeah.
Possibly. You know. Or it's just that very superstitious people, something happened and very superstitious people began adding their energy to it. It's hard in this case for me to determine what really begets what.
Right.
But the end result definitely looks to me like at this point you have a whole variety of phenomena that takes place there because of the accumulation of energy in the area.
Right. So that leads to all the tales leading up into the modern day of people seeing ghosts and whatnot, the weird time slip, whatever the Nazis were getting into in there.
Yeah, who knows? That's what I mean, is that at some point a place collects enough negative energy just from people believing the negative energy there and doing negative things there because of it.
That it just takes on a life of its own.
It's imagination creates the reality of a situation over time.
And this is clearly a castle that has a lot of imagination going into it.
Yeah, there's a lot of, like I said, imagination is just psychic energy. That's what there's a lot of already open, like, fear and open to it when people go in, and they go there on purpose, you know what I mean? It's just like when people are like, ooh, graveyards are haunted. Like, graveyards are not necessarily haunted. You're just more open to the idea of ghosts and more receptive to the notion of things when you go into the graveyard.
Because of all of the general belief about graveyards.
The fact that there's decomposing humans in there, and the way people feel about death, and it's spooky, and you're already psychically more open to seeing something in a graveyard than you are sitting on your couch. Like, in my experience, spirits can be anywhere. They're not necessarily stuck in a graveyard. I've seen way more spirits just sitting on the couch.
But get the right location, the right vibe, the right mood going, and it kind of...
Most people are more open and receptive to witnessing something that's going on when they have that mindset. Oh, it's a graveyard. Maybe there's a ghost. You're more likely to see a ghost if you believe you might.
And it also just happens that there's a lot of haunted castles out there. Castles in the dark forest,
Yeah, and this place has a long history of being a Hell's Gate and all kinds of things going on. So you walk in as a person since the before times, you know what I mean, with this mindset that, oh, it's a spooky area, something may happen here, be on the lookout for stuff. You create an open-minded psychic atmosphere when you walk into a situation already expecting it. So,
and I think that's also noteworthy, just how old the castle is, because you have like more modern hauntings, haunted manors and stuff that are more recent, but this has been going on for centuries and centuries.
That's what I mean, is there's a lot of accumulated energy and history in that place. So it doesn't surprise me at all that phenomena occurs there. I mean, you have like a lot of human history and a lot of psychic energy being poured into this location.
And a lot of bad things, like poor prisoners being tossed down holes.
Yeah, like what kind of a story that they opened with that story? I was like, good Lord, really? They built whole thing. It looks like they built whole things on top of that site just to, you know, for all we know, they built that castle specifically just to sit on that site and trap the evil. Like, people were very, very superstitious. Humanity very, very superstitious for long, long periods of history, right? So
in that particular location, they got very imaginative about.
Exactly. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me that people experience things there.
All right.
The time slips are a legitimate thing. That's totally
that time slip really did stand out to me because assuming that the story was kind of verbatim, that description of a modern 2006, like the girl who showed him pictures on, you know,
a coffin in her
a
hand.
coffin in her hand. I mean, what would this look like if you were some person from ancient times who's never seen a cell phone? What would you even try to describe it as?
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's completely possible that happened. I've talked to you before about how consciousness, you're streaming reality. Time isn't linear like you think it is. Everything is happening simultaneously. And if you know how to tune your tuner, if you know how to change the dial, it's completely possible to experience different time frames, different realities, if it's all about how you tune yourself. So especially if there's a ton of a psychic energy swirling around in this castle already, like, it's possible that you catch a thing of it and end up having a
because he said it was a dream he had.
Yeah, it's completely, it's a legitimate thing that people can experience. So I'm not surprised. I don't think it's a portal to hell.
I certainly don't either. But I definitely had the feeling that, like, there was already some sort of energy or some thing there that then got built on top of.
It's possible. It's possible that, again, we've talked before too about how, like, a violent force of Mother Earth, an eruption, a violent earthquake, something that shifts that's what takes a lot of energy, a lot of force on the part of Mother Nature to create something like that, right? So even just the happening, having that split and sinkhole open up, you know what I mean? And then all of the fear that immediately got put into that by the people in the area, like, even something like that happening could be the initial starting point of the energy that started in the area.
Yeah.
So.
All right.
Sounds fair. Sounds like a cool place. I'd like to see it.
Oh,
someday.
yeah, that would be a lovely place to visit.
Yeah, it seems like it would be super interesting.
We ever get ourselves over to Europe someday.
Go get ourselves over there and go check out the castle. Anyway, thanks for joining us for Unraveling the Unexplained. Let us know if you think we're crazy, if you think we're onto something, drop us a comment. If you have videos or things that you think you'd like to have us check out, leave us a comment and let us know. Check out the original video, like we said. And anything else?
No.
Like and subscribe. Come back and check out more later.